Can you merely incorporate Gordon, or do you have to do everything Gordon? Gordon states repeatedly in his books and articles that his ideas are music learning science, not necessarily a method, like the ones Dr. Shinichi Suzuki created. Gordon suggests his learning sequence activities to teach audiation. He believes without his specific approach or his learning sequence activities, children are less likely to develop audiation and will be stuck in music imitation or babble well into the teenage years. Just 10 minutes of learning sequence activities at the beginning of a general music class, orchestra, band, or chorus can make all the difference in your students' music making abilities. I've learned to be very careful labeling the following names, but I'll try my best. Most of the main musical approaches music educators are familiar with influenced Edwin Gordon. Dalcroze, Kodály, Orff, and especially Dr. Shinichi Suzuki. Similar to Dalcroze and Kodály, Gordon saw rhythm as feeling tempo and meters relating to rhythmic patterns. Also, every pedagogue I just mentioned agreed with Gordon's idea that everyone is born with musical aptitude, and teaching it early and correctly is the gateway to musical success. Gordon believed all children exist in a stage called musical babble until ages 5 through 9. During this period, teachers should engage in informal instruction for tonal and rhythmic patterns. The main idea is not to correct their mistakes, but to immerse them in as many meters and tonalities as possible. You'd be surprised how much they can learn through that, like triplets and different meters, 6/8 and all that kind of stuff. They pick it up like that. The more immersed and informally instructed a child is, the faster he or she will exit the music babble stage and be responsive to formal music instruction. Gordon has a single music learning theory in which students progress through 8 stages or steps, beginning with discrimination learning or rote learning, and ending with inference learning or conceptual learning. Gordon coined the term audiation, or hearing music in the mind when it's not physically present. There are 7 types of audiation and 6 stages of audiation, which progress from easy, which is, stage 1, hearing a sound immediately after hearing the melody, and hard, stage 6, predicting what will happen in the music next based on the patterns already observed, which will build on each other. Edwin Gordon proposes 8 stages or steps of musical learning. Step 1. Imitation of patterns of sound on neutral syllables, then solfege eventually. You want to use a variety of tonalities and meters, 4/4, 3/4, 6/8, major, minor, and so on. They will only audiate and learn patterns from exposure. Step 2. The patterns are then given verbal associations like solfege and a set of rhythmic mnemonic syllables such as ta, ti, or 1, 2, n, for a quarter note followed by 2 eighth notes. Step 3. Evaluation of how well they can recognize and discriminate tonal or rhythm patterns that have been taught. There are 2 ways to do this. Either have them recite tonal syntax or rhythm syntax, or play a piece with the learned pattern in it and have them discriminate or identify the familiar pattern. By the way, syntax is an orderly arrangement of pitches or durations within a pattern or patterns within a series. Step 4. Introduce written symbols for solfege and rhythmic mnemonic syllables they've heard, imitated, and orally identified in the past. Do not say quarter notes or measures. Just place the notation in real quick, like elementary school heartbeats switching to quarter notes or something like that. Smiley faces, something. Step 5. String previously isolated notational patterns into a series and practice to see whether this series can be read with ease. Vice versa for the ears. They should be able to dictate a melody or rhythm that uses familiar patterns. Familiar patterns are patterns that have been previously sounded or symbolized. Step 6. Generalization is a test of whether the children can transfer familiar tonal and rhythm patterns to new pieces to be read or written. This means sight reading should be easier because of audiation. Step 7. Encourage the students to use the learned patterns in new and creative ways. Allow them to notate what they've already invented if they can. And step 8, the last one, after they know music orally and symbolically, Last is actual music theory. Yay! The heart of music learning theory is whole part whole teaching. The whole of the task or concept at hand is presented. This allows learners to see the big picture, to understand the context. Students are presented with songs that represent varied tonalities and meters. In the beginning, you will need major and minor tonalities and duple and triple meters. Part. The student is taught content, the parts of the whole, one by one in a logical sequence through pattern teaching. For example, in each tonality we are taught the resting tone, the names of the primary harmonic functions, and tonal patterns. In rhythm, we learn what defines each meter, to name the primary rhythmic functions and rhythm patterns within said functions. And then finally, whole again. The parts are then returned to the whole when we revisit songs in classroom activities. The parts and the whole both have new meaning because we understand them in context. There's a difference between learning sequence activities and classroom activities, by the way. Learning sequence activities include pattern teaching, the music portion of your class, and it follows a logical sequence. Classroom activities are what you would normally do in a music class. Songs, games, dances, activities, playing instruments, that sort of thing, singing. It's also an opportunity to experience the patterns in real-life musical situations. Those are classroom activities. The first 3 steps to implement music learning theory in your classroom. The first 3 steps to implement music learning theory in your classroom is to isolate pattern teaching. Second, familiarize yourself with tonal and rhythm solfege. And third, identify a taxonomy of patterns. The process. Gordon prepares students to audiate tonal and rhythmic patterns into reading as recognition rather than decoding. Audiation is hearing and understanding in our minds music that we have just learned, performed, or have performed. Tonal and meter. Dr. Gordon says, memorizing without audiating is imitating, not comprehending. Let me give an example now of a learning sequence activity. Gordon's music learning theory teaches music the same way that we learn language. It teaches patterns, or musical words, to students in a logical, sequential way that yields musical understanding. I will start with a learning sequence activity, or the solfege Ti, Do, Re, Mi. Using music notation and solfege Ti, Do, Re, Mi on the board as visual reinforcement, I will teach those 3 in about 5 minutes, followed by a reinforcing activity using gestures. The class will split into 3 groups, and each group will memorize their sequence. Do, Re, Mi, or Do, Do, Re, or Mi, Mi, Do, something like that. Then I will point out to each group as they sing and gesture their part. Students will then take turns conducting the class the same way I just did. Let's watch a teacher conduct a learning sequence activity with excellent assessment method that keeps the class pace moving. He did not write the solfege on the board the way I would, but this was still really good. He's actually doing Gordon.
Do, re, ti, re, ti, re, ti, re, ti, do, mi, do, do, mi, do, re, ti, re, ti, do, mi, do, do, mi, do, re, ti, do, mi, so, do, mi, so, re, ti, do, mi, do. Do, mi, do, re, ti, re, ti, re, ti, re, ti, re, ti.
Now, let's watch a teacher reinforce these small audiation patterns.
Do, re, mi, fa, so. Good, and for our game that we're going to play is we're just going to use do, mi, and so. So what you're going to do is echo after me. Alright? So feet slightly apart, slightly bend the knee. Alright, and then I always love it when we practice our hand signs, alright? Do, re, mi.
Do, re, mi.
Mi, re, do.
Mi, re.
Now, let's watch a different teacher who has already split her class into groups and conducts to the group to sing their sequence. She's using a round, but you don't have to use a round. Every group could sing a different pattern.
Sometimes singing hey-oh, baby, let's go. And it goes on and on and on. And it goes on and on and on, yeah. I throw my hands up in the air sometimes, singing hey-oh, baby, let's go. And it goes on and on and on sometimes, and singing hey-oh, baby, let's go. Yeah, I throw my hands up in the air sometimes, and singing hey-oh, baby, let's go. Yeah, I throw my hands up in the air sometimes, and singing hey-oh, baby, let's go. Yeah, it goes on and on and on, and it goes on and on and on, yeah. I throw my hands up in the air sometimes, singing hey. I throw my hands up in the air sometimes, singing hey. I throw my hands up in the air sometimes, and it goes on and on and on, and it goes on and on and on, and it goes on. I throw my hands up in the air sometimes, and it goes on and on and on, 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 and it goes on and on and on.
In music learning theory, we teach patterns or musical words to students in a logical, sequential way that yields musical understanding. Compared to the other topics this week, this one actually made headlines very recently. Like the rest of you, I learned all about Edwin Gordon in college, so I assumed he was just history. However, he just passed away in 2015. A few months after he passed away, Dr. Gordon was honored as a Lowell Mason Fellow, one of music education's highest honors. I recently learned who Lowell Mason was and how he impacted music education, so I thought that was interesting and wanted to share it with all of you. The next slide is just the 4 Gordon quiz questions. You can pause the video if you need to see them longer. The NAFME, or National Association for Music Education, highlighted a fantastic quote of Dr. Gordon's. He said, "My best recommendation to music teachers of the next century is to improvise, improvise, improvise. Get rid of notation. Learn from music learning theory to teach children to make music without the aid of notation or music theory. Follow religiously the process of the way we learn language."